welcome to the City Club podium today, Charles Moose, the new chief of the Portland Police Bureau. For a bit of biographical background, I'll start with the fact that he was born August 11th, 1953 in New York City. And yes, he's a few days away from celebrating his 40th birthday. Raised in North Carolina, he went on to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill for his bachelor's degree, graduating with a degree in history in 1975. He accepted a job with the Portland Police Bureau right out of college and has held a series of progressively responsible positions within the Bureau. While not missing a beat in career development, he's also pursued further academic credentials. He was awarded a master's in public administration from Portland State University in 1984 and is currently a PhD candidate at PSU in urban studies criminology. Sharing his commitment to advance the profession with others, he also teaches at Portland Community College in Portland State and is active in his professional organizations. In his spare time, such as it may be, he's a captain in the Oregon National Guard and volunteers for several community organizations, such as the Black United Fund and Boys and Girls Club of Oregon. Hearing this vitae, it's no wonder that this man was selected by Mayor Vera Katz here today to lead the Portland Police Bureau. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Chief Charles Moose.
Thank you very much for such a warm welcome. Certainly before I start, even though her name was mentioned, I want to take an opportunity to introduce the boss, Mayor Katz. Thank her for coming. I want to also thank everyone for coming today and giving such a warm welcome. In some ways, it's kind of strange that a police officer can get such a warm welcome, but then again, if we can elect a Democrat President of the United States, I guess anything's possible. And one of the things I want to mention to this group, and one of the real goals of the Police Bureau, and I think the real goal of the city government, is that we continue to push the limits. And in some ways, when I think about pushing the limit, it reminds me of a story that occurred in New York City, where they have all of the various little stands out on the street vendors, and pretzels are very prominent. Well, there was a gentleman walked out of his business office every day, and he walks past the pretzel stand, and he puts 50 cents on the stand, but he doesn't take a pretzel and doesn't have any conversation, but proceeds on his way. So he does that for 2 weeks running. Then on the third Monday, he comes down, and he puts out the 50 cents, and he's starting to walk away, and the young lady behind the pretzel stand chases after him and says, excuse me, sir. And he says, I know you want to know why it is I come by here every day and I leave 50 cents and I never take a pretzel. And the young lady, who's always pushing the limit, says, no, sir, I just want to let you know that the price is 75 cents. But seriously, what I want to talk about today is no duty to retreat. In Old English common law, there was a position taken that every man had the duty to retreat. That when you were challenged, when circumstances were not going your way, when people were being overly aggressive towards you, when people were pushing into your space, that you had a duty to retreat, that you had a responsibility to try to flee from any pending confrontation. That if you couldn't flee from that confrontation, you at least had an obligation to back all the way up until your back was against the wall, and only then could you try to defend yourself and stand up for what was right. When America became a nation, United States of America, people started to take on a different attitude with regards to that old English law about duty to retreat. I think here in the United States, we have taken on a position that we have no duty to retreat. That when we're confronted with a situation, and we have to think back about our history, about the Old West, when we started having gunfights in the middle of the street, when people would have disagreements, they would settle those disagreements and people wouldn't really retreat. So America somehow has taken on a tradition that we stand and fight, that we have values, we have positions, we have conditions that we say, this is the bottom line, this is what I stand for, and therefore I'm not going to retreat off of my position. So you say, well, what does that mean to me as chief of police? And I think the message I'm talking about is that I represent an organization that we really have no duty to retreat, that people are looking to us to be responsible in certain circumstances where people have felt they've been pushed to the limit, that their position, their property, their values, their institutions have been challenged, and they need to turn somewhere. And when they turn to us, I think there's a responsibility when they look at me to say, we will understand that there are standards, that there are guidelines, that there's bottom lines. And when we reach the bottom line, then we have a responsibility as a police bureau. No duty to retreat. What does it mean as an individual commitment? What does it mean to you as an individual? The vision I see is that it means that you don't flee from your city. That as your city becomes at risk, as people try to move into your city and violate certain codes and standards and procedures, when people try to violate the laws that we've all agreed to live under, that you don't flee to the suburbs, that you don't stand up and say, this is just too difficult to try to defend, I'm going to move somewhere where it's safer. I'm going to move where things aren't so diverse. I'm going to move where everybody has a set of standards that I'm comfortable with, and I'm going to get out of the city. As an individual, it says you don't flee from the city. You don't move your office complex to the suburbs, that you stay and you don't retreat. It says that we don't retreat and send all of our kids to private schools, that we don't accept what may be occurring in the public schools where there's certainly a diverse population, that somehow we go and interact with the people that are trying to do a very, very difficult task, that we go and help our teachers, we go and help our school administrators. We take our brains in and we say, how can we help solve this problem? How can I help you make this a better education system? There's no duty to retreat. If we retreat, we take our funds and we put our kids in private schools. We put them in smaller classrooms. We pamper them. We don't let them interact with those that we feel may have more trouble and more problems than we're willing to participate in. No duty to retreat says that we stand and we stay in our public schools and we support that effort. It says that we don't back off in our neighborhoods. It says that we have a role to play in our neighborhoods as far as interacting with our neighbors. We don't build 8-foot fences and we don't put iron bars on our windows and we don't close our curtains and ignore our neighbors. That we get out and interact with each other and we talk to each other. We watch our neighbors. We visit with those that are sick and shut in, those that are injured in our neighborhood. That we don't retreat from each other and take the position that as long as I'm safe, who cares about others? It's no duty to retreat. We stand up and we say that every child is important. Certainly we've made some great strides in the city of Portland with regards to training our people about the fact that everything we do, everything we create needs to be recycled. We can't throw anything away. But what are we telling some of our young people? We're telling some of them that we're going to throw them away, that we're going to give up on them, that we're going to go and try to work with some of the third graders, but we're going to toss them away. No duty to retreat says, no, everything is recyclable. Everything has a use. We don't throw anything away. We've been throwing away some of our young people. We've been writing them off as hopeless causes. What does it say to an individual? It says that you can make a difference. That if all the thing you do is reach out to one child that you have not met yet, but you say, I'm going to help this one child, then that's what it means to you as an individual. Certainly you've read about and admired those that have helped 10, 20, and 100 children. Maybe not everyone can do that, but I think as an individual we can all help one. No duty to retreat. What does it mean with regards to a collective commitment? It says that our business community will continue to search on ways to find jobs, that there's a responsibility to always do just a little bit more, that we will seek out real apprenticeships, that we will try to train people in the skills that they need to survive as we move to the 21st century, that we look at things like first source hiring agreements and we don't turn our backs, we don't snub our noses, we don't ask questions, but we actually say, how can we get involved in this? How can we create and improve hiring agreement? How do I, as a business, get involved in mentoring? How do I somehow connect up with a school in the neighborhood where my business is so that some of those school children can come and see how business is run? How do I take time out of my day to at least reach out and say, I have an obligation here also. I am part of this neighborhood. The collectiveness of neighbors. Again, we need to participate in neighborhood watch, business watch, citizens patrols. Collectively, we all must pitch in. When you look to the uniform officer and say, that's your responsibility, that's your job, that's not acceptable. No duty to retreat says we all have to participate. It's the American way of life. We need to have open communication. Watching replaces walling. So instead of more locks, taller walls, higher fences, we've got to interact with each other. It really kind of comes down to how long can you keep your hand up in the air if you have to answer the question on your street, how many telephone numbers do you have of your neighbors? Do you have one telephone number? Do you have 3 telephone numbers? Do you have the telephone number of everyone on your block? If you live in an apartment complex, do you have the telephone number of everyone that every door you can see in your apartment complex? Are you reaching out? Are you communicating? Are you assisting your neighbors? No duty to retreat. What's it mean to civic groups like this? It means that the City Club serves as a catalyst for change. Not that you haven't done that, but certainly I'm here to encourage you to do more. You focus on what are the root causes of crime. Why do we have people making the kind of decisions that they're making? Why do we actually have crime? Not just did we arrest the person that did it, but this group needs to always be thinking, why did that person decide to behave that way? You ask that question enough, you think about it enough, and we result in some answers and some solutions. Why do we have so much poverty? Why is the gap between us and them ever increasing in this country? Why do we have all the concerns that we have about the education system? We have a lovely city. We can certainly go nationwide to find superintendents to our schools. We can go nationwide to find our teachers. We can bring people here and show them this beautiful city, this beautiful state. They want to stay here, they want to work here. With all of those kind of resources, why do we still have problems about our education system? Why do we still have concerns? Groups like yours need to be asking these kind of questions. Why is there still so much homelessness? Why is it we never even ask those kind of questions of each other? Eventually there'll be a police raid on a homeless camp, and certain people will be concerned about that, and it'll be in the news for about a day and a half, and then there's no more questions. Why are we allowing that to happen? Why is there so much hopelessness in our community? No duty to retreat. What's it mean to the Portland Police Bureau? It means we have to continue to push community policing. It means we have to continue to be an open organization, to allow people to participate in our policies and our procedures, to participate in giving us direction, in telling us what they would like to see the police officers do, how they want police officers and police work performed in their city. It means the Police Bureau has to support those individuals that are willing to get to know their neighbors, have to support those individuals that are willing to bring a young person into their business and try to mentor. It means that the police have to be there saying, this is a good idea, let us help, let us participate. It means that when you, as a group, bring forth some of those very tough questions about police policy, and you want to know why it is we're doing things a certain way, then we have to be an open enough organization to allow you access to everything that we're doing so that somehow you can make a better decision on whether or not we're doing that correctly, whether or not we're doing it to a level of satisfaction that you as a civic group are comfortable with. It means that we have to be supportive. It means that we have to improve as an organization. It means that when we're challenged by the mayor to come up with measurements of efficiency and effectiveness, that we can't just go back to the Justice Center and pout about the fact that she's asking some tough questions. It means we really do have to determine how we're judging what's efficient and what's effective with the resources that we use. It means that we really do have to be accountable when citizens call and complain, when people want to know where the funds are being utilized, that we have to be accountable, that we have to stand up and say that we have rules and regulations, and in this occasion those rules and regulations were violated and we're going to take corrective action. No duty to retreat says we must be accountable, says we must be responsive, that when people call, when people ask questions, we can't dodge those questions. We can't dodge people. When people want access, when people need us, we have to be open. Says that we have to improve our internal management. Says that we too are somehow going to see ourselves as a business, that the days of just open feeding at the public trough are no longer acceptable, that we really do need to be able to explain what we're doing with the very valuable dollars that have been allocated to the Police Bureau. It means that the Police Bureau has to be active in the schools. Years ago, we used to have police officers assisting the teachers in the schools. We pull those police officers out of that. All around the nation, police agencies have been re-entering the schools, working with programs that you most commonly know as possibly the DARE program, where police officers are going in and trying to talk about drug demand reduction with the young people. The Portland Police Bureau has not ventured into that. We have stood on the outside and watched that and refused to participate. No duty to retreat says we change that kind of attitude. You see it changing with the fact that we now have a family services unit. Years and years ago, we had a juvenile services unit where we understood that police officers had some role with the young people in our community. We stopped doing that also. Recently, we've ventured into that business again, recognized that we have an obligation there. Our family services unit will certainly continue to be enhanced, and we will be looking at better ways to interact with our young people and our families, because we're very concerned about root causes of crime. It means that you'll see police officers involved in a mentoring program. It means that you'll see a continuation of our involvement in the Police Activities League, the POW program, so that we can be seen as problem solvers, so that we can be part of the solution instead of always being part of the problem that needs to be investigated. No duty to retreat says that we need to get involved. We can't just turn our backs on some of the problems facing our young people. When you look at the goals of the organization, they match with no duty to retreat. Our partnership, our continuing need and insistence that we build bridges in our community, that we support and work with others who are also trying to solve many of the same problems that we're facing. That we work to empower the many, many talented individuals, both in our communities and within our own agency. That we somehow break down some of the barriers that have kept some of our very brilliant people from participating in everything that the organization does. That somehow, as a police bureau, we've decided that you cannot participate in decision-making until you receive the rank of captain. That somehow we need to send a different message because we have a lot of talented people that don't have that title because there's just a limited number of people that have that title. But does that mean we can't listen to the others? It means we can't empower the people in the organization that don't even have police duties. We have any number of people in the organization that aren't even police officers, but they still care about their community. They still have solutions. We need to listen. Problem solving. As a goal, it's really the only one that gives you a vision of action. But certainly, before you can solve a problem, you need to figure out what it is we identified as a problem. The whole way of thinking, the whole philosophical vein of problem solving has been missing in our organization. But now for the last several years, we're trying to train our people to think that way. And certainly accountability, I think I've already spoken about that. And then lastly, service orientation, where we recognize as police officers that what really happens here is that we work for you, that you are the customer. We really appreciate the power that society has given us over the years, that when I make a telephone call to someone, I usually get my telephone calls returned. But somehow, we need to turn that all around, that you are my customer. As far as what is the real vision, in some ways, when I was thinking about coming here today, I'm really thinking, well, do they want to know about new units and new programs? Is that a vision? Or do they really want to know about outcomes? And so I hope I made the right choice because I chose to think about outcomes. And I think the outcome I would like you to visualize along with me is I would like for the citizens of Portland to feel like problems are being addressed. I don't want to tell you that we're going to take care of every issue and solve every problem, but I want you to collectively as a community feel like you and your police bureau are actually addressing the many problems that come up. That when you bring a problem to the police bureau, that people listen, that people enthusiastically seek solutions, and that those solutions are implemented. Different problems will arise. I don't want to, tell anyone that new issues will not come up, that different areas that aren't a problem now in our city may become a problem, but I want everyone to envision that when you bring an issue to the police bureau, that we listen, that we seek solutions, and we implement those solutions so that everyone feels that the problems are being addressed. And that also goes internally, because certainly anyone here that participates in an organization, you understand the importance of the morale of the people in the organization. We can set goals, we can set procedures, we can set policy, but if the people in the organization don't feel like it's a good place to be, then those goals, procedures, and policies will be implemented incorrectly. So also our obligation to those people that when issues and questions and concerns are brought to the office of the chief of police, that they get addressed, that we listen, that we actually do empower the employees. If it's going to be an organizational goal, then it must be a reality. In some ways, I know in some of this media blitz, some information about my personal life came out that I guess I wish would have remained personal, but it didn't. And I know one of the things that was mentioned was my, I guess, love affair with sports. And so if you can bear with me, for those of you that don't really know much about sports, I will try to use an analogy that will explain to you my vision of the changes that are going to take place in the police bureau. The police bureau for a number of years has functioned much like a football team. There are individual positions. There's linebackers, cornerbacks, halfbacks, tight ends, tackles, quarterbacks. And when you play that position, you don't play any other position. And when you've got the ball and you're on offense, then there's certain people that go in. And then when you're on defense, there's certain people that go in. And then when there's special teams like kickoffs and field goals, there's a whole nother group of people that go in. And nobody goes in without getting specific directions from the people at the top. After every play, there's a huddle. They talk about exactly what everybody's supposed to do. They all rest, they get their collective thoughts, and then they proceed. And I think for a number of years, the Police Bureau has been operating that way, that we don't do anything until the chief or the mayor says that that's what we're going to do, and we got to think about it, and I don't do that. That's not my job. That's somebody else. They do crime prevention. I don't do that. Larry does community policing, and I do drugs, and so I can't help you with that. We function much like a football team. And I guess what I would envision is that we actually start to function much more like a basketball team. Everybody on a basketball team has to dribble. Everybody has to pass to one of the other players. Everyone needs to be able to shoot. Some shoot more and better than others, but everybody on a basketball team has to shoot. Everyone has to run up and down the court. Everyone has to play defense. And there are no timeouts in between plays, so you've got to make some individual decisions. You have to be empowered to make the right decision so that the team can move forward, so that the betterment of the team proceeds. There are those occasions when you come to the side and you get direction from the coach, you get the philosophical direction, but oftentimes as a basketball team, you need to be able to interchange your positions, and you need to be able to proceed as an individual and address the ever-changing issues that occur on the court. So I would anticipate that you will see members of the Portland Police Bureau starting to function much more like a basketball team, that I'm going to insist that they make some individual decisions, that they proceed, that they not come to the chief's office for every decision and every bit of direction, not come during a timeout, but they proceed. We will continue to give them the overall philosophy and the guidance, and occasionally we will take time out and we will discuss any changing strategy. But you will see individuals empowered, you will see individuals being accountable, you will see individuals taking the ball and running down the court and functioning as a team, recognizing that there's just not time in this day's environment for every bit of information and every decision to come from the top. That if you're in the Police Bureau and you need that kind of day-to-day, minute-to-minute direction and instruction, then there's no place for you at the Police Bureau anymore. That we need people that can make decisions, can make the correct decisions, that can understand the general philosophy, and can proceed to help the citizens of Portland solve problems. So if you can understand what I was just trying to say, I guess in that sense, that's the vision I have for the Police Bureau, where we actually utilize the many, many talents of the individuals within that organization.
Thank you, Chief Potter. Listen, I guess I don't get to ask the first question either now. I was just going to say that after you get done working with the police department, I know there's some business people that would like to have you come and help with the basketball analogies and businesses also. Can you give us some specifics of what you intend to do to address crime, particularly of youth? I know that a lot of us are concerned that we're seeing kids just not get the breaks they need and turn to crime. What is the police department going to do to that?
Thank you. I was very concerned because Chief Potter was such an elegant speaker. So I assume there's a compliment in there somewhere. I think that's an off-asked question, but I guess I would encourage this group if I would encourage any other group in the city of Portland, to recognize that the Police Bureau only has a small role to play in what we're going to do about the problems confronting our youth and the decisions that they're making. This is a problem that the entire community must stand up and say is their problem. The kind of things that we're doing in working with Mayor Katz, trying to bring together all of the social service groups, all of the juvenile justice people, all of the various counselors, the MICAPs, the House of Emojers, the police, to bring us all to the table, to bring the business people with the potential jobs, the job training, to bring the education system to the table. It's going to take the whole conglomerate coming together. Because quite frankly, folks, if the only thing that happens is that the business people offer up jobs, and then you get the young people there and they can't run a cash register, and the only way you can have them in your business is that you put a picture of every product on your cash register so that they can push it, and then every time they get a $5 bill, they have to put in the exact whatever the charge is, and then the machine has to tell them how much change to give. Well, then our business people can't afford to employ people at that rate. So education has a piece also. The Police Bureau has a piece with regard to training our people to be more sensitive to the fact that maybe some of our young people need to be diverted instead of put immediately into the criminal justice system. The Police Bureau has a role in the sense that the police officers may need to spend an extra couple of hours before they go home and actually just stop and talk to some of our young people and visit with them. They may have an obligation to do like the black police officers when they take some of these young gang members down to the Deschutes River and go river rafting with them on their own time. That if we can get everybody in the organization to actually understand that it takes a personal commitment, then that's the role we can play. But I really am not going to, stand here and say that it's the Police Bureau's responsibility alone, because that is just not accurate. I would love to be able to somehow foster that image that we can do that, but that is just a lie. And so we can't do it alone, and it's going to take everyone coming together. My job is to make sure that when our turn comes, that we participate 100%.
Tuck Wilson, City Club member. Chief, would you agree that we should not retreat from the need to improve the regulation of firearms?
Yes, I consider myself a very strong proponent of gun control. Okay, there are certainly too many firearms in this country, in this city. There might even be too many in this room. But the escalating violence, the fact that we turn to firearms to solve all of our problems as a society is not acceptable. The fact that we're spending all this energy to fight assault rifles, that's wonderful, but we actually need to be talking about handguns. The number of people that are killed with assault rifles, one is too many, but to just stop at assault rifles is not good enough. That somehow as a society, we need to go to that next level. And so it is a real conflict there, because anytime you talk about no duty to retreat, you also talk about, as our attorneys will well know, the self-defense. So, not to create a conflict, just to make sure that you understand that I'm a strong proponent of gun control.
Barbara Clark, City Club member. Some cities are creating incentives for police officers to live in the city. Is that under discussion here in Portland?
I'm not aware that any of that kind of conversation is actively taking place. I think she's talking about the fact that in several cities, stipends are given to police officers, low-income loans, maybe tax breaks if they buy houses in the inner city. And certainly, there's been some success with that type of program, but I'm not sure that it's been actively pursued in the city of Portland. I would certainly like to have some of those conversations. At this point, I'm sure that most of you know that a majority of Portland police officers live outside the city of Portland, and it's been tried to be addressed in certain ways. For a while, we gave a lot of conversation about a residency requirement, but it never really turned into anything real. But there does need to be some type of program to assure that we get some of those vacant houses and vacant lots in our inner city occupied. And I think it would certainly be appropriate if they were occupied by police officers.
Mike Prosian, City Club member. Chief, I was intrigued by your football, basketball analogy, not only because basketball players are more adept, but it takes fewer of them to play the game. Could you comment on staffing of your organization and funding?
Okay. Excellent. The staffing issue continues to raise its head, simply because for the last several years it's been a real issue, and we've been fortunate as an organization to have the City Council allocate in the last 2.5 years an additional 200 police officers to the organization. What I would like to see is us to fulfill our vacancies on the Bureau. We have vacant positions, authorized positions, the money's in the bank, but we can't seem to get the people hired, so they're not in the organization. And I guess my position is that I want to push our people in personnel, I want to push city personnel to somehow get us up to strength, and only then will I be willing to look at whether or not we actually have enough police officers. With regards to the other piece of the analogy, I concur that we can probably all do more, that if we indeed create the necessary partnerships with the people in our communities, that at some point I would like to think that we can do more with less. You know, long ago when we first started talking about community policing, we talked about increased satisfaction for the people in the organization, but also the fact that as we solve problems in our community, then you really should need fewer police officers because you should have fewer problems. So in that sense, you're not going to see me in the near future going to City Hall asking for additional personnel, because we need to fix the machine that's there and get all the people that were authorized, and then look around and see if we're fully implemented community policing, if we're trying to do problem solving in the most efficient and effective manner. And only when we can say yes to all of those will we consider whether or not we need additional personnel.
Joanne Allen, City Club member. Chief Moose, last evening there was a community meeting in regard to the horrible event in Northeast Portland last week. And one of the things that occurred to me, and as a matter of fact, Mayor Vera Katz was there also, which I was real impressed with the fact that she was there. One of the things that occurred to me was that people want to do something. And over and over again, people kept saying all the problems that that community was facing, and not just that community, but Portland metropolitan area in general. I guess my question is, everybody can do something. And would you talk a little bit about what each individual's responsibility is to improve our community?
Yes, and I would like to add that best as I can recall, those meetings have been going on now for a year and a half, 18 months, and Mayor Katz has been a regular attendee for that entire period. So I don't want anyone to think that she just showed up because of the tragedy, but she's been there every week. So if you ever need to find the mayor on Thursday night. And what I want to emphasize is that things have been improving in the city of Portland. People have been participating. In a lot of ways, I feel like things are better. What you are seeing a reaction to is some very senseless, violent, random activity that certainly has charged everyone emotionally, but is not indicative of the fact that the city is not improving, that people are out talking to their neighbors, that we're using more parts of Portland than ever before, that we have more parks in the positive with regards to whether or not citizens use them than several years ago we had over in the negative. We had any number of parks where people would not go with their families. And now they are using those parks, they are using those areas. We still have some areas that are underutilized. Certainly the number of businesses and the number of people moving in and around Old Town is much, much too low, that we as a community need to go back into that area and need to create whatever businesses, opportunities we need to create. We need to somehow use those restaurants, use those businesses, and somehow take those sidewalks back. Because every time we give up an area like we've given up Old Town, then we tend to lose that area. So individually, what you need to do is to use your city. Because if you don't use it, the bad guys will take it over. We've seen it time and time again. When our neighbors stop going to the parks, the bad guys will. And when we start going back, they tend to go away because they like to be anonymous. They don't like to be seen. They don't like to be identified. They don't like to be around happy people that don't want to buy drugs or don't want to be involved in crime. So they seek out some other area where you are not. So I would encourage people individually to use our entire city, to look for opportunities to use those areas that are underutilized. For our business people to recognize that the last great business opportunity is in Northeast Portland, that there's land there, that there are services there are roads there are sewers there, but we're not putting our businesses there. In fact, we're pulling out. And I guess I would urge individuals to look around and see those opportunities and use those areas. And again, I spoke to some of it earlier. You need to know your neighbors. You need to interact with them individually. You need to interact with them collectively. But that's what individuals do, is you don't retreat.
Gail Johnson, City Club member. We've talked a lot about community policing. Could you tell us what you perceive that to be, and if you anticipate there'll be any changes from what that concept was under that other police, Chief Potter?
The only changes I anticipate is improvement and enhancement. In some ways, people seem to be, when they want to be, confused about community policing. Community policing says the police and the citizens work together to solve problems. It doesn't need to be any more complex than that. That police officers need to be respectful, that citizens also need to be respectful. That police officers need to understand that there is a problem-solving formula, that there's a mentality for every situation that you address, where you analyze and you scan, you determine what is the problem, why is the problem, and then once you have that in mind, you determine what is a possible solution, and in working on a solution, you try to determine if there's any partners you can bring into that, you try to determine if there's anyone you can empower, you try to figure out if what you're doing is going to be accountable, which means is it good or bad, does it work or does it not work, and once you determine that it doesn't work, then you throw it away and you try something else. You don't stick with it just because we used to always do it that way. But community policing is not complex. It's just people working with people. The strategies and the programs, they will look different because, you know, as we figure out ways to interconnect with different people, as we consider asking our businesses to adopt a block so that on that block, any problems, that business has a commitment to work with the police to solve that problem, as our churches consider adopting a block so that any problem on that block, not just on their property, that somehow they have an obligation to work with the police, as our neighbors somehow, you know, re-adopt their block as a collective group. Those things will look different. Those will look like programs as we move into the schools to work with, you know, Superintendent Beerworth, whether we call it DARE or whether we put some other initiatives on it, that will be community policing. But don't let all of those things, all those programs confuse you and get you mired in those complexities. that recognize that community policing is citizens and police officers working together to solve problems.
I'm Don Sterling, a member, Chief. You spoke of the importance of openness. One of the places where the Police Bureau has been criticized by some in the past is for the closedness of its internal investigations process, and there has been resistance to the idea of a citizen review board of police activities. What's your outlook on that?
Somehow I knew we were going to get this question. Even though there is a history of the Police Bureau taking very firm positions with regards to citizen review, I think that you'll find that we're very interested in somehow being accountable, that there are going to be some changes in how the present system, the PIAC, the Police Internal Investigations Auditing Committee, I think there'll be ever-evolving changes in how that works. I know Mayor Katz is gathering some recommendations and some changes that she will be proposing. I know that the city auditor is constantly looking at different ways of doing that business. I think what I'm committed to as a police chief is saying that I also want to look at those changes and recommendations. I'm hesitant to just throw the system that we currently have out the door and say we need a whole new system, because one, there's certainly budget considerations. There's skills that a citizen group acting totally on its own may not have. I'm very dependent on internal investigations and on PIAC and on risk management, which is our insurance in the city. I'm very dependent on those sources as to giving me indicators as to what's wrong in the organization, what kind of behavior is causing us problems in the city. So I need those mechanisms. So I'm not inclined to just say that we're going to take one of them and toss it out, because I can't really see, in looking around the nation, another system to replace it with where that city is convinced that that is the best model and they're getting the best bang for their buck. So in this climate, a lot of indicators are that the Police Bureau has really changed its historical role as being very corrupt. We have a horrible history of corruption, of theft, of officers being involved in drugs and bootlegging. We don't have that at this point. There's no indicators that we have that level of corruption. With regards to brutality, we still have too many excessive force complaints, but at the same hand, we don't have the overwhelming reputation of brutalizing our community, that we made some great strides in our ability to cooperate and to negotiate and to seek compromise with some of the different groups that may not feel the same about issues as police officers and other citizens that we're sworn to protect. So I guess in some ways, until someone convinced me that everything is just in disarray and broken, that I'm much more comfortable in tweaking and adjusting the current system, going through a process where you come in and you talk to the mayor and other city council members, they listen, they offer suggestions in changing that whole process, and then we continue and see how those adjustments work, as opposed to just saying we're going to throw it all out and put in a citizen system because there's some people that think that that might work better. I guess there's not enough proof there for me to endorse that kind of activity.
Jim Bocci, City Club member. Chief Moose, you just mentioned excessive force, and that was the question I was going to ask you. There was a situation a few weeks ago where a young man fleeing an altercation was fired upon by two officers, and I believe more than 20 rounds were fired. That brought up the question of excessive use of force by the Bureau. Without asking you whether you believe there is necessarily excessive use of force at times, can you speak to us about how the Bureau addresses those situations when they come up? What do you tell your officers in a case like that so that they can take with them some type of information that will help them practice restraint in another situation?
With regards to the situation that you're talking about, I think one of the unfortunate things of being a bureaucracy, which we are, is that there was the grand jury, and the grand jury sent back the message that they were very concerned about what occurred there. They were concerned about the decisions, but at the same time, they didn't indict the officer. So what that means is that we now are conducting an internal investigation The officers have been brought back in for another set of interviews. We're looking at all of the evidence that was presented to the grand jury. My upper management team will review all of that information and make recommendations to me. We will sit down and discuss, in some words, what message to send. So in the interim, there's really not been a clear message to the officers, but once this process is finished and I make some kind of decision about that whole issue, then that will be the message that goes out to the officers. And at this point, because we're in the middle of that, certainly I'm not going to send that message today. And so I think the system somehow slows down that whole process, but there will eventually be a message. And in the interim, our training division is contacting all of the major cities throughout the nation, contacting the International Association of Chiefs of Police. We'll be contacting NOBLE, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, looking for possible solutions to the fire discipline issue. As the nation has moved to the semi-automatics from the revolver, it's been an increasing number of rounds fired in all of the major cities in police shootings, but that still doesn't make it okay. We're looking for what kind of mechanism we can use to better train our officers. We're going to spend more time this year doing our in-service on our simulated shoot, don't shoot, the FAT system, where the situations are brought up on a large screen and the trainer programs in different scenarios, and then once the officer shoots, the computer tells them where those bullets went, so that if you shoot 10 times and you get no hits, that there's a certain message there to the officer that so we understand that this is a real issue, and I think the community, you have made it very clear to me that there's a lot of concern about this. We're struggling, we're searching for a solution, but I would also let you know that the Portland police officers I have interaction with aren't proud of the fact that what occurred and what has occurred in a number of shootings where it looks like we're somehow out of bounds and shooting too many times. We're human beings too, we're very proud. Generally, police officers are real proud, probably too proud sometimes. We want everyone to feel good about what we do, so we're all as an organization concerned, but I also have to make sure to not send them a message that somehow they put themselves at risk because we're so proud, that when they really do make that decision to shoot, that I don't want them thinking that, well, I can't shoot because the Oregonian might write a story about it. And so it's a delicate line. We're working on it. If anyone's got any ideas, any possible solutions, please, forward them, talk to me. If you know people in other cities that have something to do with their police bureau, then we're desperate. But at the same hand, we're trying to walk that line so that we don't put our officers at risk either.
Chief Dan Goldie, member, you said in your remarks that we should be recycling, not throwing away our youth. What do you think of the boot camp approach for first-time juvenile offenders, and do you think this is a resource that the city of Portland ought to have as part of its criminal justice system?
The statistics and studies I've seen about boot camps is that the people in those have felt that they really helped. So in that sense, I think we're the kind of town that if there's a possible solution, we generally try it because we don't mind pushing that envelope. So I think in that sense, we should get behind that kind of concept, certainly look at it. The studies all say that there's something there, that there's something to be learned with regards to the discipline that the young people may not be getting at home, that maybe they get in that boot camp situation. Certainly I've had personal experience in a couple of programs. They weren't quite boot camps, but situations like street law, which is a program where when young people, first-time offenders, you bring them in and you spend 12 weeks talking to them about what the law means, what the consequences are, what their rights are, what their rights are not, what are the rights of victims, that no one's ever sat down and explained that kind of thing to them, that no one's ever, as an adult, spent time with them and had that interaction and asked them what do they think. I think some of that occurs at boot camp. So I think those kind of programs are worthy of certainly our efforts. We're at such a state that I think we would be foolish to not try something, because right now our juvenile justice system is overburdened. Everyone that's in detention is there for a very serious personal crime. Our property crimes aren't being addressed at all. Our auto thieves, our shoplifters, they're just getting tickets. They're just going out for 3 hours and then they're laughing at us. And I think we need to somehow change the fact that they need to recognize that there's consequences to their behaviors.
We have one last question from the floor, if you can give a quick answer as well. It said that you've asked us not to retreat from the city and you want us to hang in there, and we gather that you will not retreat in protecting our rights. However, how far should citizens go in protecting their own rights and property, looking at some of those that have taken up arms in their own defense?
Yes, and I think that's the difficulty with the whole theme of no duty to retreat, is that at what point do you venture into vigilantism, and what point do you venture into, I have a right as an American to have a safe environment. So I think we constantly need to balance that. I don't want to come here and encourage vigilantism or encourage people to get handguns and shoot people without making sure that they've got all the facts. And also, as a society, we need to always be careful that we don't cross the other line, because one of the things as we continue to confront more and more crime as a society is that we may be in a position where we tend to question whether or not the police have enough authority, that somehow as we seek solutions to these many, many disturbing crime problems, you find people saying to government that, well, we should change some of the search and seizure laws. We should allow the police to just do whatever is necessary to suppress crime. So it's going to be a constant juggling act, because this is the greatest free nation in the world, so we're going to have to always balance that, and somehow groups like this are going to have to always ask those questions. Yes, you want crime suppressed, but yes, you want everyone to have civil rights. So I'm not asking that you venture over into vigilantism, but I'm asking that you be an active participant in making this a better society, that somehow you not close your eyes, that you give up that Wednesday evening at home and go and participate in a community event, that somehow you be out in your neighborhood. I think that's the real message, but certainly don't take it as a let's go all buy guns.
I think we want to thank you today, not only for addressing the City Club audience, but more importantly for taking on the leadership of the Police Bureau. We're adjourned, but join me in thanking Chief Moose.